Hey there, I'm Further Reading. Today we're going to talk about the work details and labor menu. To access the labor menu, you just go down here to the hammer or press Y on your keyboard. The left side is going to show you your work details. Some of them are default and some of them you can add later on. When you have a specific detail selected, it's going to give you some detail about the skills the dwarfs have to give you an idea of maybe who you want doing these sorts of jobs. But before I jump into how to use this, let's talk a little bit about how labor and job assignment works in Dwarf Fortress. Apologies for shocking you with an Excel sheet, but I find this the best way to explain what's going on in the labors menu. By default, this is what your labors are like. Green means that the dwarf is allowed to do it. So you can see here that Gimli, Torque and Jurst are allowed to do all of these 3 jobs. If you assign a work labor to somebody and set it to only selected do this, that means that no one else can do the job. So for example, if I was to set Gimli to be the only weapon crafter, then Torque and Urist will stop doing that job. Alternatively, I can click this hammer here, which changes it to a red background. That means that the dwarf will focus only on labors that have been assigned based off of their work details. So in this case, I have set Gimli to only do weapon crafting, which means he won't do any planting or hauling anymore. In addition, you'll notice that I've put numbers in some of these squares. These numbers represent the skill of the dwarves in these tasks. When the game is trying to assign a job to a dwarf, it will try to give the job to the best dwarf at it. So, for example, if I was to order a bunch of battle axes to be made from a workshop, it will try to give that job to Gimli. Note that I don't know exactly how the priority system works, so I'm not sure in what cases it might consider Gimli to be too busy to get that job. But as a general rule, it's going to try to match each job to the best person for that job. Before I talk about some ways to use this effectively, I will talk a bit about my own philosophy for these sorts of games. In my first Steam Premium Fort, I went really hard into my details and I added a bunch of extra details to try to make sure that specific people were doing specific jobs. Then in follow-up forts, I decided to back up a bit and just try to let the game figure out who to give jobs to. And for the most part, it did a pretty good job. I find at the start of a game, it's a bit dicey because you don't have enough dwarves to do all the jobs you need. But after maybe 2 or 3 migrant waves, you can pretty much just ignore this screen and never go back to it. That being said, here are a few things I like to change whenever I am using this screen. Firstly, early on at least, I like to make my miners focus on doing mining jobs. That's because usually I want to mine out as much of a base as possible, as quickly as possible. And I don't want my miners to waste time hauling goods or cooking food or doing a bunch of other stuff. For engravers, I will start with everybody does this, but over time I'll keep an eye out to see if I have anyone getting highly skilled. If I do have someone who's highly skilled, I will limit it so only they can do engraved jobs. The reason is the quality of the engraving will depend on the skill of the person doing the job. So if you can limit a legendary engraver doing these jobs, it means you can have very high value rooms from their engravings. In terms of custom details, I like adding an outdoors detail that will cover any job that involves going outside. That can be things such as animal care, plant gathering, milking, gelding, so I'll have to go out to get the animal, as well as shearing. Fishing, I have a way to do fishing inside, and I'll talk about this in a future video. Wood hauling, animal hauling, water hauling. Well, water hauling depends. If I have a well, I won't do this. If I don't have a well, then I will, because I'll need them to be going outside the ponds and rivers to get water. And finally, sometimes wall floor construction, because usually if I'm building walls and floors, I'm doing it outside. The main reason I split it up like this is because some dwarves really don't like being outside, and even the dwarves who do like being outside, eventually they'll get a bit sick of it. So you want to keep an eye on the dwarves you have sending for outdoors jobs, and then just cycle dwarves in and out of this job to kind of make sure that you don't get anyone becoming too unhappy. Finally, sometimes I found it's good to have what I like to call a janitor. That is someone who does burial, food hauling, refuse hauling, and cleaning. This is because, especially early on, your dwarves might be a bit busy doing stuff, and you might have problems with, for example, food rotting in your kitchen or butchers. So by making sure you have one dwarf who's only doing these jobs, you can make sure that this stuff gets done, and your other starting dwarves can focus on getting the base ready. I hope I was able to help you gain a better understanding of this system, and hopefully you can learn to use it a bit more effectively. If you want more guides like this, feel free to like and subscribe. You can also check out my Twitch, linked down below, where you can find me streaming 4 nights a week. And also you can check out any of the videos on screen right now.